Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we usually go back and look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. However, today we have a special bonus episode where we're going to discuss Netflix's 2025 science fiction action adventure film called The Electric State. This is directed by Anthony and Joe Russo and stars Millie Bobby Brown, Chris Pratt, Huy Quan, Jason Alexander, Woody Harrelson, Anthony Mackie, Brian Cox, Jenny Slate, Giancarlo Esposito, and Stanley Tucci. What a big cast. I am Jesse, I'm your host. Thanks for joining me for this special bonus Flix Forum episode. As I always say, if this is a film you haven't quite seen yet, if you haven't got a chance or had a chance yet to see The Electric State, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on because we will spoil the film as we go along today. And we kick off the show with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one's about a girl who sets off on a journey to find her brother's physical body with the help of his consciousness in robot form. That's a weird way of putting it. This is a big budget film. This is a big budget film. So it's sci-fi, it's dystopian, it's a little bit weird. If you're in for the ride, hang around because I want to talk about how this one ended up on Netflix. So, The Electric State, the title around the world, in Spanish it translates to electrical status. In Mandarin it's power state or electric fantasy kingdom. I like that one, that's a good one. In Finnish it's called connections. I do like that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. In Swedish, it's called The Passage. I mean, yes, that plays one part. There is a bit of a passage through areas of this barren land, but not the main message of the film, I don't think. In Turkish, it's called Virtual Country. Yes, not bad. In Ukrainian, it's called Electric Staff. Nah. And in Vietnamese, it's called Robot Land. Yeah, good job, Vietnam. That's a good summary of this film. The tagline for this film is Rage with the Machines. So instead of the famous rock band from the era of Rage Against the Machines, because this film is sort of set in the 90s, it's Rage with the Machines. And the other tagline for this one is, it's not the 90s you remember, because yes, this film has a lot of nostalgia and references to the 1990s. The film was actually announced in December of 2017 when Anthony and Joe Russo acquired the rights to Simon Stalenhag's 2018 illustrated novel called The Electric State. The Russos were set as producers with Andy Muschietti in negotiations to direct. Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, frequent collaborators of the Russo brothers, were set to write the screenplay. We then go to December of 2020, where Universal Pictures won the distribution rights to the film, with the Russos now directing and Muschietti remaining as an executive producer on the project through his new production company. Millie Bobby Brown was slated to star, with production set to begin as soon as the Russos completed The Grey Man in 2022, and Millie Bobby Brown concluded filming for season 4 of Stranger Things. In June of 2022, it was reported that the film might have its distribution rights transferred to Netflix, as Universal was no longer planning to give the film a theatrical release. Later that month, it was confirmed that Netflix would be distributing the film, with Chris Pratt in talks to star alongside Brown. Pratt was confirmed in August, with Michelle Yeoh, Stanley Tucci, Jason Alexander, Brian Cox, and Jenny Slate joining the cast. Cox and Slate were reported to be voicing characters in the film. We then go to October of 2022, where Woody Norman was added to the cast. In November that year, Giancarlo Esposito was cast in the film as the voice of Marshall, a menacing robotic drone. Anthony Mackie and Billy Bob Thornton also joined the cast, with Huy Quan, Michelle Yeoh's co-star in Everything All at Once from 2022, replacing her as she left the project due to scheduling conflicts. I do believe that the character was changed a little bit to adjust for this change in gender and character, I guess. In October of 2024, it was reported that Woody Harrelson, Alan Tudyk, Hank Azaria, and Coleman Domingo had joined the cast as voices of robot characters too. Principal photography of the film began in October of 2022 in Atlanta under the working title of Stormwind. On November the 4th, 2022, film production was temporarily paused after a crew member working on the film died in a car crash off-set. Filming wrapped in early of February 2023, and in February of 2024, reshoots occurred from March the 20th to April the 5th. The score was composed by Alan Silvestri, making this the third collaboration between Silvestri and the Russo brothers following their work on Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. The first images and plot summary of the film were released by Netflix on the 1st of October 2024, and Deus Johnson of Inverse expressed concerns that the photos were confirmation that the film would seemingly be unfaithful to the original book, since it showcased a visual style that involved muddy color grading compared to the original artwork from Stalenhag. Netflix did release a teaser trailer on October 17th, 2024 during New York Comic Con. It was confirmed that the film would largely diverge from the original source material in the hopes of telling its own original story. This did receive a negative response from fans who had hoped for a direct adaptation. These major plot changes were explained at the film's panel in New York, which involved Anthony Russo stating that they did find the original material fascinating and compared their experience of adapting it as similar to the Marvel films. But he also stated that it was difficult for them to understand the story and felt that the world was not shown enough in the graphic novel, which led... it's not a graphic novel, I think it's a picture book to be honest, but this led to the idea of developing it into a 2-hour film as challenging. They used the artwork as inspiration to make an entirely new story that featured the usage of 1990s aesthetics and the plot additions of robotic animatronics developing artificial intelligence, which involved them campaigning for equal rights in a retro-futuristic society. I'm blown away by the movie, Stalenhag, the author of the picture book, told Netflix. He said it was an amazing experience watching things that I've drawn come to life this way. What resonated most with me was the emotional core of the movie, which is the need for family. Even though the movie has changed genre from the book a bit, the main core is still the same and has been expanded on beautifully, he said. The Russos and writers Marcus and McFeely were in communication with Stalenhag throughout the film's development, and he was pleased to see the creative liberties they took to make the film stand on its own. He went on to say, "They asked me questions about the timeline and backstory, but it is their work," he said. "They're the best in the world at what they do, and to see them work on a project that comes from me is beyond satisfying. It's surreal. I'm so positively surprised by the end result," he said. Over the last 18 months, Netflix has also partnered with UCLA's Samueli School of Engineering and VT Pro Design to develop 2 types of unique and real robots that bring to life the film's characters. Kid Cosmos, one of the characters in the film, got to walk the red carpet at the film's LA premiere last month. He's a childlike robot inspired by 90s cartoons and toys with an optimistic personality and a full range of motion in his head, fingers, arms, and legs. UCLA's ROMELLA, or Robotics and Mechanisms Laboratory, developed a custom wireless controller using GHz frequencies, allowing Cosmo to be controlled from a distance of up to 1 kilometer away. So it's pretty crazy, a real-life robot that has sort of traveled the world with Netflix's marketing campaign for this film. Netflix has also tapped into its full arsenal of resources, utilizing its own live streaming events to maximize awareness for this film. A trailer for Electric State debuted during the Ravens vs. Texans NFL Christmas Day game. The film aired custom content within WWE Monday Night Raw on Netflix, and it also had a featured spot at the SAG Awards, also broadcast by Netflix, after Millie Bobby Brown presented an award. Netflix have also put out a video game based on the film called The Electric State Kid Cosmo, and it was released on iOS and Android by Netflix Games on March the 18th, 2025. It features Michelle and Christopher's childhood while they play through a mobile game featuring Cosmo. With a reported budget of $320 million, this film is one of the most expensive films ever made. It's one of only 16 films to cost more than $300 million, and it's the only film out of those 16 films that isn't part of a franchise. This is a big gamble by Netflix. After a week of being on Netflix, it was the #1 film on Netflix globally with 25.2 million views and 53.8 million hours watched. It was also the #1 movie on Netflix in 47 countries and in the top 10 in a further 93 countries. So, I don't know. I don't know if Netflix are happy with this or not. They've spent $320 million. Yes, it's #1. Yes, it's got some good numbers, but that's a lot of money to spend on a film. Let's talk about this one. So, as I said before, it was filmed in Atlanta, so there's no awards or nominations. This is straight off the press, this film. It premiered on the 24th of February 2025 at the Grauman's Egyptian Theatre in LA, where those robots I was talking about before were in life, in person there as well. And it's pretty, I guess you've got to mention that this theatre, some of you would have, if you've been to Hollywood and done, the Hollywood Walk of Fame or Hollywood Boulevard, you know this theatre, and you would probably know now that Netflix actually owns this theatre too. But it did hit Netflix worldwide on the 14th of March 2025. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? So, on Rotten Tomatoes, this sits at a paltry 15%. That's on 126 reviews, so that is rotten. The audience, a fair bit higher, sits at 71%. That's on more than 2,500 ratings. IMDb, this is the users as well, 6 out of 10 on 38,000 ratings, so that's fairly solid. Letterboxd, on the other hand, a 2.1 out of 5. That is super low. That's on 93,500 ratings, but it has been logged by 104,000 people. And on Metacritic, our traffic light system of green, yellow, and red, the critics have it in red. It sits at 29 out of 100 on 36 critic reviews, so very, very low. The audience also has it in red. Stop, don't watch. Sits at a 3.9 out of 10 on 185 reviews. So overall, you would probably say audiences don't mind it too much and critics absolutely hate it. What are my early thoughts? I think maybe because of this bad press that I've just sort of mentioned with critics, I was probably expecting a disaster, but I enjoyed this for what it was. It reminded me of like a 1980s Spielberg type film, and I feel like if it was made by Spielberg and released this year, it would probably be getting acclaim. I think it's just because of the directors and how people feel about these directors. It is not that bad a film. It is not the worst film that I've ever seen. So let's talk about the film. Let's talk about some of the characters. So Michelle is our main character. This is Millie Bobby Brown. She plays a girl who's lived a happy life. She's been so supportive of her brother. Her brother's this genius, and she supports him in all of his endeavors, and then loses him in a car accident as well as her parents. So she's fostered out and turns into a bit of a rebel, is how I'd put it. She's almost awoken by her brother's consciousness, who's in the form of a robot, and leads her on this journey to travel and find his physical body. And this gives her hope because she thought he was gone and has had very little to live for in the world that we see. She is one of the only characters, I would suggest, that lives in reality. There's this device called a neurocaster that the characters use. It's like a VR headset that puts them into the body form of a robot so they can sit, relax, be lazy. And she refuses to use this neurocaster, unlike most of the people in society. So she's probably our most firm human character in this film, apart from, I would say, Keats, who is played by Chris Pratt. He's this former soldier who's turned into a black market go-to man, alongside his robot Herman, who he doesn't use the neurocaster for. It's like a friend. It's like a pal more so than actually being involved in this world. Chris, I mentioned before, is Michelle's brother, the super smart kid. This cartoon character, they loved cartoons as kids, and this cartoon character called Kid Cosmo is this character avatar almost that his consciousness uses to find his sister, and this Cosmo joins Michelle on the journey, as well as Keats, to support and try and find Chris's actual physical body. Keats has this robot alongside him, Herman, that I mentioned. Then we've got the villains, I guess, the bad guys that chase, and we meet so many other robots along the way, but the other two people in this film, we've got Ethan Skate, Stanley Tucci. He's this big tech villain who wants to rule the world, and I guess this is from his trauma. His mother was an alcoholic, so he believes in escapism and using this neurocaster so he can see his mother how he wants to see her, and he teams up at times with this guy called Marshall Bradbury, also known as the Butcher, played by Giancarlo Esposito. He is this guy that hunts down robots, as in this new society, robots aren't allowed to live with humans, and they need to be locked up and sent to these like wastelands almost. He's this hardened, tough soldier, I guess, who turns a little bit towards the end as well. The directors, Anthony and Joe Russo, everyone knows these guys. They started off in comedy. Arrested Development, the TV show, You, Me and Dupree with Owen Wilson, and then onto the Marvel films, some of the later Captain America films, as well as Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and the Netflix original film called The Grey Man, which we have done a bonus episode on this show too. So if you've seen The Grey Man, like the Russo brothers, give that one a listen if you can. They obviously, and I'm sure most people would know this, are working on the upcoming Avengers films, Doomsday and Secret Wars. So they're going to be busy over the next few years. Let's talk about some scenes. What are some scenes I enjoyed in this film? What are some scenes that didn't necessarily work? I think that some of the best scenes for me were the reveals of characters and who plays these characters. Like I said at the start, this has got a big cast. So when we see Ted, who's Michelle's foster dad, it's Jason Alexander, the guy from Seinfeld. You're just like, I smiled. I was like, that's so funny. And then we see Huy Quan as the doctor, and Chris Pratt gets this big intro too. It was cool. I just like seeing these people on screen. I thought they were well done. I liked the Billy Bass fish thing. Like this was a popular culture sort of thing in the 90s. Everyone thought that was hilarious. This fish that you press a button, it sits on the wall and it sings and wails and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was cool, especially in moments where Bradbury, the Marshall Bradbury guy, the butcher guy, comes and takes, he wants to take the robots away, and there's some jokes with Keats, pretending he's someone else with someone who's mute, and it's like, you can speak, he's in shock, and this little battle almost where Herman, Keats's robot, zaps Keats by mistake, as well as like they try to run away in this mine cart and it crashes. Just some good physical humor. I thought that was good. The design in the mall, there's this big shopping mall, this rundown shopping mall with all the robots, sort of where they live in this abandoned area. I thought it was visually stunning. I thought that was really well done. You could see where a lot of the money from the budget had gone into special effects. Michelle and Kid Cosmo, they are in this mall and they put on this projector on the roof of the mall almost with these cartoons that Michelle used to watch with her brother Chris as a kid, and all the robots come and sit down and watch them together. I thought that was very sweet. I think there's this character, the doctor, Huy Quan. He's got this PC that it's like an old school PC, and towards the end, this PC, working with Michelle to get in to see her brother Chris, and the PC runs into Chris's room with an axe saying, "Humans must die." That was funny. I thought that was good. I really liked Marshall Bradbury, the butcher, sort of turning and realizing that maybe he's not doing the right thing, and he takes his neurocaster off to rejoin reality, and the camera transitions to Michelle putting it on for the first time. I mentioned she doesn't believe in it, and she puts it on so she can say goodbye to her brother. I thought that was really good. And I think finally Keats, like Chris Pratt, he's a good actor, he's a good comedic actor. There's an emotional moment at the end where his robot, Herms, is being destroyed, and he's almost saying goodbye and questioning, what am I going to do without you? You're my best friend, I love you, and then maybe more than a friend. And then there's this reveal, or like this little tiny, like Herm, this robot, had kept shelling his shells almost, and there's this like little 8-inch Herm that comes out that's still alive and says, "Oh, what were you saying about me?" I thought that was cute, and that was quite funny too. There's nothing really in this film that didn't work full on for me, which I'm surprised with. Usually these types of films, there's an awkward moment or a scene that just doesn't play well. Like, this is all in the same playbook, and it's hard not to get swept away a little bit with the visuals and just the fun that the characters are having in this film. Some themes, some takeaways, some motifs, I guess, from me. I think that obviously this talks about humanity versus technology and how far humanity or humans can let technology go before we need to turn it off, or limit it or lock it away, and this leads to that connection between humans and like having an actual physical conversation with a human or physical touch and not relying on technology, and that idea of focusing more on relationships and life versus death. And this is seen through the end too, that idea metaphorically of pulling the plug not only on technology but sometimes on life too. The use of technology in this film is used for escapism throughout too, and maybe that reflection that society has a bit of an over-reliance on technology at times, because look at what's in your house. Apart from being on your phone all the time, you do have family, and the connection that you can have with family, and the pain that you can feel when they're gone, but also that longing of family to be together as well, and you have to be alive to die almost. So I think that's all. They all play very big parts in this too. I also think that freedom is an important thing in this film as well. I think freedom plays a big role in relation to the importance of it, and the ability to enjoy it, and the cost of it at times as well, and the consequences of war too. And freedom obviously doesn't go alongside war, or only for the victors at times, and suffering and life go hand in hand in these sorts of situations, because sacrifice is required for times to gain peace, and we see that with Christopher at the end too. Finally, the idea of changing the world. Christopher wants to change the world. He has these dreams of a better place, a better world, and what sometimes you have to do to fight for that as well. What did I take away from this film? What else did I take away from this film? I think the soundtrack to me, it was very, like, maybe it's just because Chris Pratt was in this film, but it felt very Guardians of the Galaxy-like. If you think about the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtracks, they are soundtracks that stand out. Great songs, good music. I feel like they tried to do a similar sort of thing. You set this film in the 90s, and they picked some great songs that highlighted the 90s too, like some really good versions of, I think it was like Good Vibrations and Don't Stop Believing and Breaking the Law by Judas Priest and I Will Survive, Wonderwall by Oasis, some songs that you can sing along with almost at times in this film. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts, some ideas. I've only got one sort of thing that I wanted to ponder, and I think the whole thing at the start with Chris, and we see the interaction of Chris and Michelle at the start being such close siblings and that connection between them. And he mentions, because he's very scientifically minded, but he mentions the connection of particles between them and how this will always be around. And we sort of, at the end of the film, Michelle does this almost video call to the world to say what's happened. And she mentions the idea of the connection of particles. To me, this feels like a blatant sequel setup to the second one. Like, is this her quest to be like, cool, yes, I've had to say goodbye to his physical body, but can I travel the world? Can I travel the continent again to find my brother? And I feel like that's just a lingering thought that's in my head at the end of this film. Other than that, I'm ready to wrap this one up. We give the film a rating out of 5 on this show. For me, like, it's not the best film going around. I get that, but I had fun with it. There's nothing that felt completely horrible or cringe almost to me, which is good. It is what it is, and I think it's a family film that maybe generations of kids that are in that age bracket of 8 to like 13 at the moment might watch this and see this as their own version of the Goonies or their own sort of film that they're like visually excited by, and characters that they liked and possibly wanting to see more. It's not that bad. Don't listen to all the reviews. I'm giving this a 3.5 out of 5. I like this. We're on socials. We have Facebook. We have X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Instagram. The question that I wanted to put in there is in relation to this idea of these neurocasters, where people are constantly just sitting around being lazy with screens on their faces all the time to try and enjoy life. Like, how do you limit, in our current society now, how do you limit or adjust your screen time? How do you not become addicted to social media, to your mobile phone, to the constant scrolling on your phone? What are some tricks and tips that you have? Like, do you use the settings on your phone to limit your interactions and your time on socials? It's a tough question. It's a hard one, like, because we are so reliant. It's not necessarily that we're just sitting on our phones for entertainment and pleasure. We're using it to pay bills. We're using it to do work. There's so many ways and reasons why we're so connected through devices and screens at the moment. Good thing to leave on. We do have a huge back catalogue of Netflix original films. Episodes that we've done, 400 plus, lots of bonus episodes. We are still continuing our journey from The Beasts of No Nation, which was the first Netflix original film way back in 2016, I believe. So we're sort of up to the catalogue of 2021 at the moment, currently where we're at. So we're still about 4 years behind current time. But if there's a Netflix original film that you've enjoyed, have a search through our catalogue, have a listen, have a like. We will be back, as usual, on Monday for our regular episode. So I will see you then.